The third college KYS Unit Championship 2014. My name is GC and I'll be your chair today. On side government we have KYS something, Zuleika, Mandlin, and Benjamin, and Mandlin giving a reply. And all we have Rainbow, Prodigies, Gautama, Steven, and Kubin. Without further ado, the motion is asked by the feminist movement to support polygamy in Muslim countries. I'd like to invite Prime Minister to open the case. Here.
Put it down. Ladies and gentlemen, when you talk about opinions in the first place, nothing can ever be right, nothing can ever be wrong. It can only be right and wrong to to that individual itself. Therefore, I believe that different opinions doesn't have to mean that a particular opinion is wrong. But before moving on to opinions, what is the problem today? Before moving on, let's look at the distinction of ideologies that occurs in today's status quo. Let's look at the Western countries in the first place. In Western countries, first of all, when we talk about marriage in Western countries, they're only allowed to marry once. Second, when we talk about Western feminist movement, for example, they oppose every single conservative laws and they tend to exaggerate when it comes to these conservative laws in the first place. But when we look at these Muslim countries, these kind of laws that the Western countries or they might not think as something that oppresses them in the first place. But when you talk about feminism in the first place, how do we actually think that we actually uphold feminism? We believe that when a woman has a choice to make, the rational choice that she makes to herself, that she thinks is best for herself, that's when the feminist rights is actually upheld. But before that, let's look at the problem in today's status in today's society. We live in today's society, there are assumptions that because the Western countries are assuming that women in Muslim countries do not have their rights, that their feminist rights are taken away from them. Therefore, we believe the government side comes up today with a stance that we want to clear this unnecessary tension between them by actually telling you, telling these Western countries that they should not actually oppose polygamy in Muslim countries. Why? I'll be talking on two substantives. The first in how the essence of polygamy, and second on impact towards both countries in the first place. So moving on to the essence of polygamy. So what is polygamy in the first place? Polygamy is when a guy is allowed to marry a maximum of 4 women at a particular time. It's not compulsory, and it also needs consent of the woman. This can be seen in status quo when such countries actually need the guy to actually have a signature from the woman. For example, Malaysia. And we will tell you that even if this woman does not consent to it and the guy still marries another, the woman still has a choice because she then can ask for a divorce. So why is there polygamy in the first place? We tell you when it comes to these Muslim countries, they don't want it. It's because of the religion in the first place. So they take it as a priority and they take it as a norm upon themselves. So, and then they accept it because they grew up with it. Therefore, there's no conflict of polygamy in these Muslim countries in the first. We tell you it does not. Why? Because the woman still has a choice in the first place whether she wants to enter into that kind of relationship. She can tell her husband, you know what, if you want to marry me and you want to force me to go into this kind of relationship, I will leave you, for example. The guy does not only need her consent to actually marry another lady, but also she has the rights to actually ask for a divorce and leave that particular relationship. Because of that choice, we believe that it does not harm the feminist movement. And I will tell you how in the end of the day, does the polygamy actually benefits any parts at all. Let's do let's do an analysis. Let's look at these Muslim countries where adultery is almost non-existent, and let's look at the Western countries when husbands tend to cheat behind their wives. We tell you that even in both situations, the lady has to agree to the fact that her husband is loving and you confront the lady and tell your wife. Therefore, you actually provide your wife a medium to make a choice in the first place. Rather than when you look at Western countries, when adultery exists, you never give the woman the rights to choose to be in that particular relationship. Therefore, I believe in polygamy, it does benefit the woman in a way. Yes, Gautaman.
In Western culture, how do you say that they do not give a choice? How do they not give a choice?
Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes, that's a total different story. When it comes to Western countries, they're only allowed to marry once, and they have a divorce if the guy loves another woman. That's a whole different case. When it comes to polygamy, the choice of whether they want to be in that relationship is still there. Therefore, we believe that the feminist rights, the rights of the feminists in both countries are still upheld. The only reason there are differences is because the Western countries have different ideologies, just because different ideologies than the Muslim countries. They think that polygamy is bad just because polygamy leads to her husband with another lady, then that's totally fine because she made the rational decision. Moving on to my second point, and then you question, how does consent exist in polygamy since the wife has to choose into something that she might not like? But we tell you that first, we can see through the fact that these countries still protect these ladies by asking for signatures in the first place. Before these marriages, they will ensure that these ladies have the consent in the first place. But second of all, we tell you that not just that, the fact that the lady has the choice to leave afterwards if she does not like it is already a proof that she has the consent to be in that particular relationship. Second, how does it empower feminist movement? I told you, I have already told you from the get-go that feminism is all about the woman having the rights to choose, because we tell you it doesn't. Given the rights to choose whether they want to be in that particular relationship or not. To them, it still empowers them because they still have the rights over their own body, they still have the rights to their own relationship, and therefore at the end of the day, it still empowers them. So what have I told you today? I told you that different ideologies doesn't mean polygamy is wrong. It doesn't mean you have to oppose that particular ideology. It just means that it has different ways of actually empowering a particular woman in a particular country. So if a woman in a country thinks it empowers her, that she's happy with the life that she's now, we tell you that there's no reason for you to go and create tension, unnecessary tension in the between the two countries in the first place. So ladies and gentlemen, if you actually want to stand for the rights of the woman, give the woman the rights to choose. It can be in different ways. At the very least, that's her rights to choose. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Just before we move on, does anybody have a pen? Great. Thank you, Prime Minister. And now we move on to the case of that opposition made by Leader of Opposition. Here you go.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right, I, as the Leader of Opposition, from side opposition, strongly oppose the motion for today, which is that this House believes that Western feminists should not oppose polygamy in Muslim countries. Right, on what basis do we say this? Right, I see a clash here, ladies and gentlemen, members of the floor. Right, Syed Garf is coming up and telling us how that it is a norm in problem, right? They talk about how the only importance is that they have a loving husband, but and that's a stable relationship. But you see, the problem comes when the situation in Muslim country, as we all know, Muslim countries have a very good high reputation of oppression of women's rights, right? What are some examples, right? Number one, the main one we are looking forward to it today is that they are not allowed to work. There are, and also that it's not socially acceptable for women to do the work in the household. Now, what does this mean, right? This means that it provides a financial burden to the husband to support four women as a whole family, right? So this is how it clashes, and this is how the problem arises. So when a husband is faced with such with a financial burden, how is it that you suppose that a stable relationship can be formed, right? When there is no, when you possible to actually bring about a peaceful relationship, peaceful family in the household, right? Yes.
See, I don't see a clash in whatever we're trying to talk about. If the man really has financial burden, then don't marry people. Don't marry so many wives in the first place.
Yeah.
Please sit down. Men have drives, men have sexual drives, men have a need for companionship. They want love, they want a companion for their lives, especially in a society, as you say, it's a norm to marry more than one woman, a society where it pressures you to actually marry more than one woman. How can they not want to marry somebody? They will try to marry as many women as possible up to the limit of four for the sake of companionship and for the sake of their sexual urges, and also to satisfy their financial burdens. Please sit down. How does it satisfy the financial burdens? Well, this leads to a problem. What problem does it lead to? Well, number of problems really. Uh, is actually the promotion of encouragement of trading of kids, right? Kids trading. They trade daughters, they sell their daughters, they sell their children because they are unable to pay for their finances. Therefore, they use children as a source of income. This is a very pressing issue in today's society, especially in the Muslim countries, right? Now, one man will not be able to support four women, right? Now, when I talk about violation of rights, what do I mean by violation of rights, right? Number one, it promotes a certain number of violation of rights. Like for example, number one, it takes away a sense of individuality. Number two, it promotes objectification of women. Number three, it promotes depression among the women. They come in consent, yes, in seek for love and stable relationship. But what do they get? They come in, they get babies, yes. Then they get their babies sold. They don't get enough attention. How is one man supposed to spend possible? But in Muslim countries where economy is such a pressing issue, right? How are they able to actually? How will it be possible for them to establish a peaceful relationship with their family? Yes.
But that also means that women still have the right to leave that particular relationship if it was that bad.
Yes, please sit down. When the woman has some children and things like that, do you know that the Muslim country has also a high reputation over extortion and violent acts over women? The Syrian crisis can be a perfect example for this. They have a very good reputation for not being able to solve conflict very well. So these men, they will, of course, they do not want their reputation to be harmed. They are very sensitive about reputation. It's a very big thing in Muslim countries, and I do not think the women have a choice, because men in Muslim countries, it is a norm for men to have ultimate Side Gulf came up and they told us, she was talking about the essence of polygamy, how it is a norm, how it is a priority, and how it benefits them. Well, she still hasn't brought up the benefits that are good enough to support this case, up to a point of Western feminists to not oppose this people, right? They're supposed to prove that women, female Western feminists are not supposed to not oppose, right? But what all they have done is just brought say that, okay, polygamy does the same thing as monogamy, right? Please understand, right? But they do not bring up the problems that I've just told you about, right? They do not talk about how these problems can be solved, and they do not say how status quo is a problem, right? And also when they're talking about consent, right, I've brought up the point of where the men are known to actually have a sensitive side over their reputation. So what does this cause? Will hit them, the men will torture them in unimaginable ways. It is also a pressing issue. Haven't you seen a National Geographic cover? There was a cover a few years back, right? Of its last year, I'm not sure. There was this woman who had her nose cut off and her ears cut off and things like that, right? It's so violent. We do not want this violence in our community, right? So it's just logical for these female feminists, Western feminists, to actually oppose polygamy in Muslim countries. We shouldn't stop this. We shouldn't stop status quo, because these number of issues are still here. They do not say how. So this is not a good enough reason for the Western feminists to not oppose. I hope to hear a better reason in the future, and not just about the beauty of polygamy and how it is a norm or a priority, right? To sum up the case, what I've just stated was that even though women have a consent, they actually do not have a consent, because men have a good reputation, have a sensitive side for their reputation. It is a financial. Also, it promotes trading of kids. They sell off their kids and things like that, right? So, and with that, I hope that we do not suppress the rights of the Western feminists to actually voice out their opinions, which is valid and legit, as what we side op has proved. And with that, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, opposition. Now, may I invite Deputy Prime Minister to continue side of this case. Thank you.
It is very shameful to hear coming from opposition side, hearing them generalize the Muslim countries as a certain bloc who endorses violence, who endorses selling of children, and we believe that this is very false, coming especially from the opposition side. And this is the very problem in today's debate. What we're talking about is the very essence of the feminist movement. What is it? The feminist movement celebrates the ability of a woman to choose whatever makes her happy, to choose whatever she feels good with, whatever makes her a woman. And we tell you that this is why Western countries should not infringe on their rights to choose, on their rights to be in a polygamous relationship in the first place. The main things that they brought up from the opposition side was, first of all, the financial burden onto the man. We believe that this doesn't exist because, first of all, the man has the choice to be in a polygamous relationship or not. We tell you that the pressure that they said existed within their society does not exist in the first place, because the man had the choice to choose in the first place whether he wanted to be in a polygamous relationship. Second of all, they said that this would actually encourage domestic violence towards these women. We tell you, first of all, these people don't have to be in a polygamous relationship to be violent in the first place. They can be violent in monogamies in the for all we care, right? We tell you that this isn't the main problem in today's debate. Therefore, we uphold our point on how we don't allow these Western countries to oppose the choice of these Muslim countries in the first place. And they say that they sell children as a source of income because of this financial pressure. We've already clarified to you how there is no pressure in the first place, and second of all, how they're a conservative country, therefore they would not sell their children because they respect the choices of these people in the first place. And even when they brought up, even if domestic violence does happen in polygamous relationships, we tell you that these are basket cases. Just because some cases happen doesn't mean that all. Moving on to my points of substantives, how, first of all, this encourages a mutual respect towards sovereign countries, and second of all, how respecting these Muslim women's choice to be in a polygamous relationship benefit the feminist movement in the first place. Looking at the very nature, the very essence of the feminist movement in the first place, it's about celebrating your choice as a woman, celebrating what you want to do, let the woman do whatever she wants. How this benefits the feminist movement, if you do not infringe on their choice in the first place, is because, first of all, you allow these feminists to, by allowing these Western feminists to oppose a polygamy, you're allowing them to force onto these Muslim women a certain ideology of what it means to become a woman. Because there are there are many ways a woman self-actualizes, right? A woman can self-actualize by staying at home and cooking, and another woman might self-actualize by going out and working in society. This is why we believe that Western countries should not infringe on this, because feminist. And just because what they do does not make the Western countries happy doesn't mean that they have the right to force onto them this ideology that women are only allowed to be in monogamous relationships, and by being in a polygamous relationship, you're not respecting yourself as a feminist. We believe that this is very problematic. Why? Because first of all, you don't try to force a certain ideology onto them. This infringes on the very essence of feminism in the first place, and we believe that this is very problematic. But before I move on to my second point of substantives, yes.
Okay, but what if the woman has lost the right of her sovereignty to actually make proper decisions for herself? Like as I mentioned, it's a consent to enter, but then only she realizes the after effects, which are...
We already characterized to you that in a polygamous relationship, you consented to enter it and you can leave it. And it is upheld within their Muslim society because these governments actually respect these women in the first place. Why do we say so? That there are Muslim countries who are starting to allow their women to drive, who are actually starting to respect these women as a certain part of society as well. Second of all, on the point of how this actually upholds mutual respect towards sovereign countries. First of all, what does this opposition cause? Opposing of this polygamous relationship cause? We tell you that it causes big problems because these Muslim countries will start to think that these Western countries cannot respect their own beliefs, their own what makes them female. And if we try to force this ideology onto them, this will cause retaliation, and these feminists will start to think that these feminists will grow up thinking that they have to live to a certain ideology, they have to live to a certain stereotype and a certain standard. And we say that this is very, very problematic. The essence of this very debate, the very essence of the feminist movement is to be able to celebrate your choice as a woman, to do interfere with their own beliefs, with what makes them, then what's the point of the feminist movement in the first place? Because the feminist movement is to enforce the choice of the woman, celebrating that a woman has a choice to do whatever she wants without being stereotyped by society in, for example, how they should only work in kitchens and how women should not be allowed to go out and to work in society. We also tell you that we respect their choice as women in the first place. Is this perspective of Muslim women harmful towards them in the first place? We tell you no, because a woman's choice to be in a polygamous relationship out of love and if she is willing to consent to one, we believe that this respects the woman in lieu with the very essence of the feminist movement, because this lets her choose to do whatever she wants. And we've already identified to you the main issue today, which is celebrating the choice of the woman, and by whether they want to be a polygamous relationship that makes them happy, then it will cause more problems than benefits at the very end of the day. If you respect these Muslim women's choice to choose, if you respect that people have different ideologies and different ways to self-actualize as a woman, then go without opposition.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alright, thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Now to continue to keep the side of the ship, may invite them to lead the proposition.
Speaker, very good evening. I bid to everyone present, the honored government, and to ladies and gentlemen of the floor. So today the motion before us is this House believes Western feminists should not oppose polygamy in Muslim countries. We as opposition are strongly against it. So what the whole case of the government was mostly based upon was that if the Western feminists came to the Muslim countries, they'll be infringing on the female rights. Well, I say no, due to the fact that these Western feminists, they come to there to help to enforce women rights in that country, due to the fact that in those countries, women are the minoritized, not minoritized, they are stepped down upon and they are looked down upon. And they say that in rebuttal to the first rebuttal to that, of course the man has choice, but you did not properly explain how the man has choice when faced with their own natural instinct, sexual urges rejected, and how it will solve the problem that the man still wants to get married, even in the face of financial constraints. Next is I would like to rebut the points given by the government second speaker. Say that it will infringe the rights of women in Muslim countries if we are to force the ideologies of the Western countries onto the Muslim countries. Well, that's not right, because these Western countries are just merely trying to help the Muslim countries, trying to uphold women rights, trying to increase men respect for them. So yeah, it's right for them to oppose polygamy.
Like onto these people in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are not forcing upon them. We are just merely telling them the other side of the coin, that you have rights too, and you don't have to go into polygamy. If you want to, being pressured by the society, you have a choice, not merely being pressured by society. And also, it will, if the Western feminists are sent to allowed to oppose polygamy, no, rejected. Allowed to oppose polygamy, it will dissolve mutual respect between the countries. Well, I say no, you actually increase it due to the fact that the Western countries are helping the Muslim countries to be developed, rejected, to develop themselves. When the Western countries, when the Western feminists try to help them, they'll actually form stronger bonds between the two countries. Now I'd like to go to my own points.
When you said that the Western countries are trying to help these conservative people, how in the world is Western ideology better than conservative? Because we do not know which is right and which is good. It's up to them to choose, and they have different opinions.
Yeah.
The Western feminists should do this due to the fact that the women in Muslim countries are usually ignorant that they have rights to get out of these polygamous relationships, and that also as what the government and extortion. So yeah, rejected. Now I'd like to go to my own points. So this is the basic layout of my own points. How opposing polygamy will benefit Muslim countries? But first, what is the problem that we are trying to solve this? Problem is that there's a large overpopulation in the Muslim countries due to polygamy. When you have more wives, you will inevitably have more children. This is the inevitable, and this is the conclusion of too much polygamy. The government cannot handle the amount of people, so it cannot properly modernize the Muslim countries. So when the government cannot properly modernize it, how can the Muslim countries evolve with the times? How can the economy increase? How? So the Western feminists should rejected. Enlightenment to them. Next is the rights of women to oppose. Western feminist movements have the right to oppose this. It is their right to freedom of speech, and so to oppose the status quo in these Muslim countries, which is polygamous relationships are not frowned upon. It is the right of the feminist movements. It's also logical for feminist movements to oppose this. Rejected. It's also logical for feminist movements to oppose this due to the fact that when a man marries more than one woman, the man cannot give as much attention to each woman, and they lose individuality, as what my opposition leader has said. So it's logical for Western feminists to protect the. In conclusion, by allowing the Western feminists to oppose polygamy in Muslim countries, the rights of the woman will be upheld, and Western countries also be more productive. With this, I end my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition. The last supplementary speech was like government may I come to
Restart this. Hi, YouTube. My name is Benjamin Uy. Today you witness how opposition side will be crushed by my super speech. First of all, let's take a look at the only issue I have in today's debate, and it's the only thing that opposition came up and talked about. The issue is the benefits and the harms of polygamy, which one supersedes the other, right? So first of all, Gotaman came out very confident and he pushed on put the burden on us to prove and for us to engage. As he said this, look, to marry more than 4 people, and so therefore all of a sudden they will sell their kids. Okay, very simple response to this. Number one, what are you talking about, Gotaman? Okay, you don't care what the man does, right? Whatever wrong decision that the man does is never our burden to prove. We don't care if he jumps off the building because his wife drives him mad, because it was never a problem to begin with, it was never a problem to prove. Secondly, please, this is a conservative country with conservative people, so they do conservative things. They don't sell their kids, right? They practice religion, and religion is what philosophers say, that religion is the origin of moral values, and that moral values is instinct in that. No. Now, so this talks about that it will violate women's right. They say, hey, it will cause depression, right? You will objectify women, and you have less attention, so there will be no establishment of a good relationship. Now, first of all, man in the first place, the woman is the one who want to have sex with the man in the first place, because the woman is the one who consented and want to marry them. Because this was a defense that we brought up that you didn't see, right? The wall is very strong and you didn't break it down. But secondly, even if the woman feels violated, right, or is objectified or is depressed, you can opt out from the relationship and you don't have to continue to be in the relationship. And it's something we have told you millions and millions of times, right? And they say, okay, so what if they don't have choice, right? Because women in conservative countries are ignorant of their rights and they don't really know their rights, right? But before this, right, to enter a polygamy relationship is before you enter, you have to sign a contract, right? Meaning that these people have the rational calculus to know what they're doing, to know what they're doing before in the first place. They know that they're going into this relationship, and say whatever you're trying to do. I don't understand what you're trying to do. Okay, now any BOIs? No BOIs. Okay, good. Now, moving on, right? And government said that it gives no benefits, right? Polygamy has no benefits and only gives harms. This is a lie. Why is this a lie? Now, because because already stated that polygamy is the main reason of why adultery doesn't exist in most conservative countries, right? Adultery means where spouses cheat on their wives. You get it? Okay. Now, because since there are 4 wives, they don't even need to cheat, right? Because it's very obvious. It's very obvious that in conservative countries, adultery is non-existent, and I believe that's a very huge benefit for the wives and also also for polygamy, right? Before that, yes. It is one of the benefits of polygamy. There are many other benefits of polygamy, such as for example, in the men, they get to have more pleasure, what we say, right? That is also another benefit of polygamy for the man, right? Because we're giving you analysis on both sides, where what if the man chooses to opt out, or what if the woman chooses to opt out, right? Because there's consent in both parties, and I believe this is a very fair system. Now, second, of this very funny argumentation. It is said that the population of the people will increase in the country if polygamy were to exist, and that's why Western feminist movement would have to oppose this kind, or will have to oppose polygamy. Now, so what? So what if there's a lot of people? I don't see any harms if the population of the country is very big. But secondly, a government that can't govern their country is a stupid government to begin with and shouldn't exist.
Shouldn't exist and they are stupid.
What? What are you talking about? You went on an assertion that that governments cannot control huge populations of people. That's an assumption. I was giving a rhetorical answer. Understand it? Okay. Now, the main ideology that opposition went on is that that they wanted Western feminist people to oppose and to press on the Western ideologies to curb and to help this kind of conservative countries, which is the problem right now to them, is polygamy, right? But you can never know which opinion is better, which right is more universal. Because if you think you're saying that the right of the Western is more universal, then you're debating in absolute, right? Because there's many opinions on which is right and which is wrong. We're saying that you can still do what you want, and that's what my prime minister have been talking about, right? Because first of all, it's really a waste of time, and because you're trying to inject Western policies and Western ideologies into conservative countries to begin with. Conservative countries who are very tight and very conservative in nature, who's not that open, and it's just a waste of time when Western communists do all this stuff, and it's a waste of time. Now, in conclusion, what I've stated to you today, I've stated to you why the YouTube people, and I crushed the opposition. Also on why the essence of polygamy itself is very beneficial, and the benefits supersedes the harm into this debate. Secondly, how the consent exists in polygamy, and it's fair for both parties, for the man and also the wife. And thirdly, on how my Deputy Prime Minister talked about on the impact and on how much of an impact, and that's why I'm glad to propose.
Thank you very much. Now, those are such speeches made by opposition. Here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, from what I've been able to gather here, basically what the opposition is saying that polygamy is a complete norm in Muslim countries. Now, basically, even though it's a norm, the current situation in today's Muslim countries is bad enough. How is it bad? How is it bad? Now, we brought up the point saying ones just don't enter a polygamous relationship. But let's look at it from a logical point of view. Does a single man really have enough money to keep 4 people comfortable at the same time? No, right? How many people are that rich in this country? I mean, basically in the world, how many people are that rich enough to support 4 women at the same time? Now, please sit down. Now, these financial burdens will also lead to a lower quality of living and other problems such as starvation. Now, besides that, they also say that. Now, besides that, they also say that this not interfering will uphold mutual respect among 2 countries. Now, what are they trying to say here, man? Mutual respect among countries does not exist right now because this is not actually an issue that will cause a conflict. We, the Western side, is trying to help them. Why can't they understand? Trying to help them and they can't understand it. Yes.
We need to consider the fact that only one of the ideologies is right. Why can't the Muslim countries' ideologies be right as well for them?
Alright, fine. Let me clarify something first. There is no right or wrong here right now. What we're talking about is what is better for the people. We're not talking about what is right or wrong. It's what is better. What is the point here. Now, besides that, they say that women can leave anytime. That women do have right in Muslim countries because they can leave anytime. Now, let me ask you. Let's say, for example, you're married to a guy, right? And he marries another guy, and you're not happy that he married another guy. By that time, imagine if you have children and responsibilities. If you break off your relationship with that guy, you're gonna have to support your children all by yourself. How many women would do that? Women would want. How many women would be willing to take the burden? Yes.
The fact that she made that particular choice when she was rational, what's wrong with that?
Okay, fine. You say they made that choice when they were rational, but let me tell you, if you properly think, right, when you properly think, right, let me elaborate more. They say they are already rational when they enter a polygamous relationship, but allow me to clarify. Most of women do not really know all the factors involved. So let's just say you get married to a guy and after that you find out some of the factors. You say that they would be able to leave, but we say they would not be able to leave. How many responsibilities would they have to the husband? And how many women would actually be willing to leave their husbands? Now, besides that, let's look at the psychological effects this has on women. They say this does. Because how many women really have enough time to treat all 4 wives at once? We only have 24 hours in a day. 8 of that is spent on sleeping. How much time can you actually allocate to each woman so that she actually feels satisfied? So this unsatisfactoriness, they eventually. Yes.
The love towards her husband that forces her to stay in a particular relationship actualizes her and makes her happy. Why are you forcing her to leave that particular relationship if she's happy with it, regardless of the harms and cause that comes with it?
You say they wouldn't want to leave. You say they don't want to leave because they're actually happy with the situation. Now, let me ask you, truthfully, honestly, how many women are happy with this situation right now? We're humans. We feel human emotions. We feel jealousy. We feel all kinds of human emotions. How many women would really be satisfied that their husband is giving them enough time if there's another woman taking up his time in the house? Please sit down. That the government has brought up is that polygamy has benefits and that this will help to eradicate adultery. Now, let me say this. Adultery is basically cheating, right? But what is the difference between polygamy and adultery here? The difference between polygamy and adultery is basically polygamy has the consent of the first wife. Let's just say polygamy has the consent of the wife, and adultery doesn't have the consent of the wife. That's the only difference here, but it's still the same thing. You're still having sex with more than one woman. So what is the difference here? This is merely being sugar coated under a different name, that is polygamy. Now, besides that, the government third speaker came up and said that there are really no harms in the population increasing due to polygamy. Now, come on, man, no harms in overpopulation. Seriously. How many people do not have enough food? Sit down, please. We say that no harms in population. How many people are starving? Overpopulation is one of the main problems that the human race is facing today. Yes.
Your British opposition is going to give a public speech about the problems of a household in a conservative country. That is why you need Western feminists to oppose polygamy to begin with. What is the harms?
You're asking me why should we oppose? That's good. Now, in Muslim countries, this has become a norm. Just because it is a norm does not necessarily make it right. Am I right? A norm is not always right. So we're saying if the norm is not always right, and if they're trapped in an illusion that it is right, and they're help them. That is basically what we're saying in this debate here. So now, in conclusion, what we're saying is that what the government is saying is that that women have consent and different ideologies are not necessarily wrong. Well, we don't say so. Even though having consent for a crime does not necessarily make it right, and even though there is no right and wrong in ideology. So with that, I conclude my case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Officer Witt. Now let's start the reply speakers made by Officer Shin. Here.
Okay.
I'll be giving the reply speech right now. Right. What will I be giving out in this reply speech? What is that aspect? Right. Basically, I will be summarizing this whole debate. What really happened? Discussing the major issue, which is basically whether polygamy is right or not. Right. So allow me to first clear up the points given by the government and the opposition. What government came up and told us was that polygamy, we shouldn't remove the essence of polygamy and how it eradicates adultery, and that the benefits far outweigh the harms. They said that consent exists, right? They said that consent exists in this kind of relationships. Number 3, they state that we are infringing on the rights, we are forcing ideologies on them. Number 4, they say that it upholds mutual respect between countries. We as opposition, we say that it's a financial burden. Number 2, it causes violation of rights. Number 3, Number 4, right of women to oppose. We are actually defending the right of women, right? So this is a bit messy. Allow me to arrange everything. Firstly, let us start from discussing whether polygamy is good or not. Gov came up and told us the benefits. What was the benefits, right? Mr. Benjamin, he came up and told us that it gives us more pleasure and consent exists, and that it is an essence, right? So what does this mean? This means that if I have the consent, I want more pleasure, I get into a polygamous relationship. Is that a key to a stable relationship? No. You need trust. You want companionship. You need love. You want to help each other, you want to help each other throughout each other's lives. It is not mainly about sexual pleasure, and it does not matter whether consent exists or not, because as I've stated, that there are many factors that the women do not know, and whether or not they are allowed to live relationship does not matter, because of the current norm let's look at the harms, okay? Violation of rights and overpopulation. It is detrimental towards the country in two ways. Detrimental towards the country and also towards the women. Women themselves is a violation of rights. How does it provide objectification of women? I've already stated in my first speech. Allow me to re-clarify this thing. When you see, men, they look at women only as sex objects and as baby factories, right? Because as I brought up the issue earlier, right, they just to compensate for their financial burden or existing in these current Muslim countries, this is the status quo, they will do these kind of things, right? So why shouldn't it be proper? Well, let's look at the religion itself. This thing came out, they say that polygamy is allowed. Maybe polygamy was allowed when finance was not a problem, when financial burdens did not exist, when the current status quo of the countries, when all this chaos and the current economical state of the country was not at such peril, right? So to work, okay, on this basis, the financial burden does exist because the man has to support all four of them. It's not logical, right? So this leads to the violation of rights, objectification of women, leads to psychological effects, leads to low quality of living. Obviously, these are the other factors, and obviously it is bad towards the country, and also it is against the rights of women. How can you possibly dare say that you are defending the rights of the women when such detrimental effects occur after that, right? As long as side gov fail to prove to us that these issues are not issues and they do not exist, we as Side Op still stand strong with our stand for today, which is that this house believes that Western feminists we believe that we should oppose the motion for today, which is that this house believes that feminist movements, Western feminist movements should not oppose polygamy in Muslim countries, right? We believe that my case. Thank you.
Thank you all for time. Now to end today's speech, but anyway, I can reply.
This debate isn't about whether polygamy is right or wrong. It's about which one upholds the feminist movement more, whether when these Western countries infringe on these people's rights to choose whether they want to be in a polygamous relationship or not. What our side came up to here to prove to you today is that when these women come into polygamous relationships, they've already consented to it. Therefore, it defines who they are as a woman. When the opposition side only came up to you and told you about all the harm is about whether the Western countries should or should not infringe on these Muslim females' rights to choose whether they want to be in the polygamous relationship or not. And it is not our burden to prove that these harms won't exist, because we tell you that these harms occur also outside a polygamous relationship. We've already given you examples of how domestic violence happens outside of polygamous relationships. Therefore, it is not the debate today. Second of all, they failed to prove to us how it actually objectifies women when we allow these people to go into these polygamous relationships in the first place. They only gave you a one-liner on how it objectifies them, but they never really clearly analyzed how it actually does infringe on their rights as being a woman. And their whole case ran on these 5 assumptions. First of all, that all Muslim countries are violent. Second of all, that all women do not like being in polygamy. Third of all women in polygamous relationships are abused. Fourth of all, that all men choose. We tell you no, because there are many, many ways to become a feminist, and you can self-actualize yourself as a female whichever way you want, instead of having these Western countries come to force these certain Western ideologies onto you, telling you that there's only one way to become a feminist, there's only one way to exercise your right as a female. Next, what did the government side fail to do, and what they ended up doing in the first place? First of all, they told you how the many harms of these polygamous relationships, on how these men are pressured into doing this, how this actually causes harms towards the children, and so on and so forth. But we tell you that's not the debate. We stick stuck with the debate today, and we should win this debate because, first of all, we told you how by not allowing these Western countries to infringe on their own beliefs, what makes them their own feminists. We tell you that this actually upholds the feminist movement because we're respecting the choice as a female. To stay in the relationship. They were rational when they wanted to go with this person in the first place, even when they knew that they were consenting to a polygamous relationship where they had to share all their pains with their husband, where they had to share all their pains as a family together. We tell you that it is their informed choice, therefore we should respect it because it is in the very essence of the feminist movement itself, respecting their choice as females to make their own choices, to let them do whatever they want that makes them happy. And why do we win today's debate? Because we tell you how our side upholds the feminist movement, how by not allowing these people to force them into certain stereotypes, lets them live as a woman, lets them be strong as whoever they are.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you both teams, both first of all, shake hands, and please exit the room. Yeah,